Welcome, everybody, to the first War Stories episode of 2023. First of all, I just got to thank Tony for that awesome redo of the intro for 2023. I don't know how long that took you to find all that different footage, but kudos to you, sir. Kudos to you.
Thank you very much. It didn't take too long. It didn't take too long, but I think it was after our last show, we were talking backstage and we said about got to put MasterSun42 in. I think you had the idea of just inserting him into the original intro. I was like, no. RetroBlasting is getting new branding on a whole new intro. I was never that happy with the original one. So 2023 War Stories is going to bigger and better things.
That's true. That's true. I've, as everybody knows, I've been loving all the episodes that we've done of this, and it feels like, and it's only fitting that this show feels like it kicked into a higher gear when a major muscle car owner decided to show up and be a part of the group. But there we are.
You make me feel so special.
Oh, you are special. You are special, and you have an amazing car. So,
yeah, you were the car, Tony.
What kind of car do you drive?
I have a Shelby GT350.
I know.
He was for something.
What's that?
Compensating for something.
He was smart and bought a muscle car, or a sports car, I should say, that actually works. I was dumb and bought a sports car that notoriously doesn't work. And that really could be the summation of how life choices can either go right or go awry in total.
But you look cool.
Look cool. Standing still. Yeah. All right. Sorry.
I would like to just make one more quick comment about the intro. I would like the audience to know that Michael actually felt very uncomfortable being the first person on screen, and he was like, he really felt like it should have been me and Clemens. But for me, it was nothing to do with it being the RetroBlasting channel. It was just the way I loved that shot of the banking Spitfires, and it didn't make sense to cut from that to, you know, a photo of Clemens or me when I had that amazing clip of you in the Spitfire. It just made sense in the editing sequence with the music. So that's why Michael's first, folks. He didn't force his he's not that way inclined. So I just wanted everyone to know.
The only regret I have about any of the footage from that flight is the fact that because of their safety regulations, they didn't let me wear the actual flight goggles that I brought and stuff. They were like, look, you're going to wear this helmet and just wear your sunglasses. And I'm like, okay. But so if they just let me have the goggles, that footage would have looked ace, but alas, no. So, or I would have looked like Anakin Skywalker from the pod race, one or the other. Either way. Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, tonight we are talking about what Tony and I thought for our entire lives was pronounced Beau Geste, but it's actually Beau Geste, or I guess as the French would say, Beau Geste. This film was one that I have owned for 20 years on DVD, but I had never seen it because I actually bought the Gary Cooper DVD set to watch another film. And then I realized, I'd never actually watched this movie. So Tony, just kind of kick us off with what your background knowledge of this film was and why you wanted to watch it for the series.
Well, I always knew it had a connection to the French Foreign Legion. Like the cover of the book and the poster is quite famous. Mm-hmm. They did do an Action Man French Foreign Legion figure in the Palatoy line, which was always, didn't have it in childhood, but it was something I was aware of. And, you know, it was always a very desirable outfit and one that I wanted to add to my collection. And, you know, we've covered a lot of different movies. I was going to say genres then, but it's one genre, it's war films. Mm-hmm. But we've covered a lot of different periods of conflict, and we kept talking about, you know, we need to do a black and white film, or we wanted to do a black and white film. And I know my friend Brendan Haley, who's a big supporter of both of our channels. He's a Queensland police officer. He and I were talking about it. It was one of his favorite films growing up. He's got a real thing for Beau Geste. Mm-hmm. So I threw it out there, and I thought I had seen it in childhood. in childhood, like in growing up in the UK, we used to get televised a lot of like black and white Zorro stuff. I was a huge fan of Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan movies. They were always on TV, and I have a feeling it's something I probably did watch in childhood, but I was so young, I don't remember. So the experience of watching it this week was interesting.
Yeah.
It's
you may have even seen the other film, which is the one that I bought the set for, which is called Lives of the Bengal Lancers. Gary Cooper was kind of like doing this whole Legionnaire thing at that point in his career. Yeah. So you may have seen that film and like I got it transposed. So yeah, it's based on a 1924 book. The book is set, the story is set prior to World War I. And the research that I did indicated that there are at least, I believe, 4 filmed versions of this. There was a very famous one with Robert Coleman in the silent era. Then there was this one. Then there's one from 1966. And then apparently, unless the 1966 one is this one, which I could have that meshed up in my head, I believe there's another one with Michael York as well, which is more of, I think, a send-up than an actual serious film.
Well, when I was doing the research, which was after watching the film, they did say that they renewed the license for this film in 1966. So I don't know if, like on IMDb, it's there twice because they renewed the license or something. But
there is a 66 version. There is a poster, and you know, I saw it and I was looking at it and I was like, oh gosh, okay, there's multiple versions. I already knew about the silent one, but I went and I read some reviews of this movie at the time, not present day reviews, but reviews back in 1939. And all the critics then were comparing it to the 1920s silent film. And they were calling the silent film this masterwork. And they were saying that this film is a good yarn. They're like, this film isn't bad or anything, but they're like, oh, the masterpiece that is the Ronald Coleman version. And I'm like, oh, well, all right, well, maybe one day I'll see that one. But the funny part about that to me was that Gary Cooper and a lot of the other actors in this film were actors in the silent era. And when everything transitioned to sound, a lot of actors like Douglas Fairbanks and people kind of lost their careers because you suddenly had to speak, and a lot of them didn't have great voices. Like they had great faces, you know, for demonstrative acting. But once they opened their mouths, it was like, yee, you know, where
it's kind of like Tony. Yeah.
I could feel that. I could feel that coming. I could feel it. It was palpable.
Where
it was easy. It was easy.
But I don't know if for those of you watching, if anybody knows this, but Greta Garbo, who also came from the silent era and successfully transitioned into sound, she was this massive Gary Cooper fan. Like she was a well-known. Today she would be like, you know, almost like a celebrity simper. Like she just loved Gary Cooper. She thought he was second to none. She thought he was the best. And so every second that I was watching this movie, because I've always found Gary Cooper to be kind of wooden. Like I've always found him to be kind of like plays the same guy in every film, and he acts kind of the same way. And I was amused by the fact that I knew he was going to be playing a British person without even trying the accent. So he was like our first Kevin Costner Robin Hood. Like it was, you know, whatever. But I was watching this whole thing and I was like, I don't think Gary Cooper is a bad actor, but I still don't see what Greta Garbo saw in him. I don't know what she was so over the moon about. And
well,
then
he was a handsome guy. I don't know about his acting, but
right. The last thing I'll say is that it's funny that Susan Hayward has a very small role in this movie as Isabel, the daughter of the dame, the aristocrat. And the reason I found that funny is that later on in both of their careers, Gary Cooper and Susan Hayward will be in this weird Western. It's not like your typical Western. And in that film, Susan Hayward has like a freak out, her character. And to get her to stop freaking out, Gary Cooper literally clocks her in the face. I'm just giving you my random classic movie trivia. So I was like, oh, I wonder if Gary Cooper's going to punch Susan Hayward in the face in this movie. All right. So we can get on with the plot. Well, no, we can't. Before we get started, MasterSun, your initial thoughts when this film was chosen and you first loaded it in and started it.
Never heard of it before.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hell, it's a black and white movie. Oh, my God. Here we go. Taking one for the team because I'm a team type of person. And then I started it, and I was like, oh, this is going to be even better. There's no black people in this movie. And then there was a butler. And I'm like, that butler better not be black. Or you're going to hear about it. He was not.
He wasn't.
He was not. And in the car, I was like, all right, this is an old movie, black and white. You're going to see some things. Like, I'm not sure if the Arabs were actually Arabs. I believe they were the Caucasian people with face paint. But we're gonna, it's time. It's the time. But now, things are different.
I will say the fortunate thing in this regard is this movie is about the Legionnaire group in the fort. Like everybody else is just kind of like window dressing. Yeah. You don't really get a close look at anybody else. It's more of they're more of like, so this movie dodges a lot of what would have been normal issues at the time because of the nature. And also because, and I thought about this when you said that when we were talking a few days ago, because they are a British family living in pre-World War I England, of course the serving staff is not going to run into, because it's England. Like it's So that was
it's England, but the three British brothers are all played by Americans.
Oh, yes.
So. Hey. They picked the best people. I got nothing.
Wow.
No.
This is going to be a long night.
This is what we do.
So, come on. Explain to me why an American has never played James Bond, but then an Englishman can be Superman.
Ooh,
because we can do accents, bro.
Oh God,
we can do accents too. They're just not.
That's yours. Not an accent. That's a garbled mess.
I will simply throw in there with my, and Tony already knows my feelings on this, so I don't think I'm stepping on a landmine. I will simply point out that Hollywood also has decided that an American and a Swedish person have played Lara Croft, but not a British person yet, which I don't know how I feel about that one. Well, you know how I feel about that, Tony. I think it's stupid. So anyway, also, hooray for our Australian Wolverine. Should we talk about the plot? Okay.
Well, I don't want you to miss. There was a super chat very early on from Troy.
Oh, okay.
I don't want Troy to miss the super chat, and then we'll get into the plot.
Not a problem. Thank you so much, Troy. Thank you for the super chat. He says, "Just stopping by to support and salute the heroes on the panel. I'll catch the rerun tomorrow. Happy Friday, all. Happy Friday to you too, sir, and good luck on your stream." That is Troy Pacelli from Last Call. Nice guy. Nice little laid back stream. And I did not mean little in the patronizing sense, Troy. I meant in the sense that it's a very like laid back, cozy kind of stream to hang out on. Unlike this, where I don't know what barbs my co-hosts are going to throw at one another in any second, where it could get tense.
It's all about that soccer thing. There's still some hatred, hatred right there.
Yeah.
This I don't mean any offense to Laser Pants when I say this, but like this love-hate thing between you and me, Clemens, is very similar to the love-hate thing between me and Ryan. Ryan, I'm sorry, Clemens, his barbs are much sharper than yours, Ryan. So
yeah, take that.
Ryan needs to up his game.
I'm already apologizing for the little comment. I can already feel it. I didn't mean that. Troy, the way it sounded. I did not mean that the way it sounded.
Hey, I've watched a few of Troy's streams. The first one was when you appeared, but then I've watched a few others since. He's a good guy, Michael. He's gonna understand. Totally.
Yeah, he's the one joshing me, so I'm sure I'm fine.
Random Brad's car.
Yeah,
sorry, wrong live stream.
You should just get a placard that says this is now a 3 POA live stream. The way they have you ever seen how people hijack the message threads with Spider-Man memes and GIFs from the animated show? And so people will be like talking about some PS5 game, and one person will throw in a Spider-Man Bakshi animation meme, and then so everyone starts doing it, and then they say this is now a Spider-Man thread. Okay, so let's talk about this plot, because as all of us have agreed, it is way more convoluted than I expected. And we're going to begin, oddly enough, at the end. And I was watching carefully when it started, and I went, I think they're showing us the end of this movie first. This is one of those films. And sure enough, it was. So at the very beginning of the film, we are in the Sahara Desert, and a cavalry group of French Foreign Legion approach one of their fortifications. They're there to re-garrison it or resupply it or reinforce it, whatever you want to call it. And they notice that there isn't a lot of movement. Nobody's really like calling back to affirm they're going to open the gate. And that's when they shoot, the commanding officer shoots 2 shots in the air with his revolver to get their attention. And they're fired upon at their horses' hooves by 2 rifle shots. And they're like, we're going to get in there. We got to get in there. And so their bugler named Digby, who is a major character in this movie, you'll find out more about him later. For those of you with a keen eye, Digby is actually played by Robert Preston. So any 80s kids will know him best as Centauri from The Last Starfighter. That's right. His long, illustrious career. This is,
wow.
Yeah, his early days. And there was a big coup in '84 to get Robert Preston to be in The Last Starfighter, because he was a legend in his own right. You know, not just the music man, but his career went back a long way. So Robert Preston, I'm going to end up calling him that most of the time, but his character name is Digby. Digby says, sir, I'll go over the wall. And the commanding officer says, all right, you go over the wall and you get those gates open. And when he goes over the wall to get the gates open, he doesn't really come out. And that's when they start to realize, wait a second, something's wrong. So I'm going to play the clips that I put together at first, and then we'll give a few more details of this little bit of the movie.
I'm going to take a closer look. Attack if I'm fired on again.
So he's smart enough to look around, and he realizes that there's a lot of dead guys that are just hanging out in the battlements now. They're all set up to look like they're actively guarding the fort, but it's all corpses. And so then Digby goes over the wall.
Taking him this long? No, sir. I'm going over myself. I'll tear the place down if you're not out in 5 minutes, Major.
Which compels the CO to go over the wall. And here I am trying to click the YouTube thing to bring up comments because I'm a moron. So he goes over the wall, and when he gets in there, he sees all the dead men leaning in the battlements with their rifles propped up into their shoulders, into their armpits. And he starts calling out for Digby, and Digby doesn't answer. He cannot find Digby no matter where he looks. And then he goes down, he opens up the gates and brings in his other men before they freak out that maybe their commanding officer has also been taken by this, whatever's in there. And right as they are establishing the lay of the land, he's trying to explain to his subordinate that I found 2 bodies up on the roof of like the equipment hut that are not in the battlements. They're like two bodies that are clearly they were killed in a different way. Let me show you. And when they go up there, the bodies are like gone. and the weird part is his reaction. So I'm going to show you the clip, everybody. And then this is where you're going to start seeing why MasterSun and Tony and myself were trading messages back and forth. Like, is everybody in this movie stupid? Okay, here we go.
Yes.
Bugler! 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 Where's the bugler? Look for him if you want to. I have. Up here is a young man who died peacefully. Beside him is a sergeant with a French banner through his heart. Where, sir? Never mind.
It's like, you just told me there were 2 bodies here. I asked you what happened to them, and the CO is like, never mind. And I'm going, that's a big never mind. Like, all I could think of the whole time was maybe, and again, I'm really throwing some kind of, I don't know, it's not plot armor, but I confess I'm trying to throw some kind of headcanon at this to make it work. But if you've seen Paths of Glory or any of the movies about the French in World War I, you know how strangely arrogant their officers were at that time, and how their officers, it was more about saving face than it was about making common sense decisions. And there was all this kind of weird decorum. So all I could think of in that moment was, all right, this is bizarre, but maybe the guy just doesn't want to admit to his subordinate that these bodies have disappeared, and rather than worry about it and try and prove his own words, he's just gonna da and move on. Yes.
He could have said the heat may be getting to me or something. I'd have been like, oh, okay, all right. I'd have let that go. We're in the desert. But
right.
No,
that's what his PIC's saying. As he's walking off, his second in command's like,
yeah. And another thing, remember how he said in the clip, if you don't back in 5 minutes, we're coming in, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what you didn't see is he took a long time to survey it. I'm like, go open the gates, get back up. You can't find a guy who went over the wall. He's gone.
Right.
And now you're over the wall. You can't find nobody. First thing I'm doing, I need backup. I'm going straight to the gates, open it up. Hey, y'all come in here. I lost a dude. Get your guns up. Y'all go fight this.
Sure, especially when you find out that the entire garrison is corpses.
They're all dead. Something's going on.
Yeah.
There is a predator out here somewhere, and he's got the freaking laser things about to hit me.
Yeah. It could be a predator, a ninja, an alligator. We don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah. Agreed. Totally agree. Right as they're starting to make plans to reassess the fort and get everything working and operational again, a Bedouin army shows up, a Bedouin cavalry, whatever you want to call it, a rebel army. And rather than take shelter in the fort, they decide to run to the adjacent oasis that is there to supply the fort with water. And that's when they notice, while they're away from the fort, this occurs.
Fall back on the oasis. Break ranks and fall back to the oasis. Look, Major. There goes the evidence. Of what, sir?
So it's a weird setup, and just to explain to everybody what that letter was that he picked up off one of the dead guys who then disappeared. For those of you that didn't get to read it, the letter said, "I confess that I am the guy that stole the blue water sapphire from such and such at this address." So the CEO pocketed that letter. So he's referring to the evidence of not only the massacre, but the evidence of what happened at that fort overall, and then of course I'm assuming also the evidence of the mutiny that you'll learn about later, and also the evidence of whatever that letter means. So there's a lot to unpack in that we weren't able to, because the movie's set up to then tell us all about it. How are you both feeling at this point with that setup when it then flips to a card that says it's something like 30 years earlier or 20 years earlier or 15 years earlier? Yeah.
Clement?
Go ahead, you go first. I'll go last.
Well, so initially, like I had figured, like yourself, Michael, had figured out fairly quickly that they're showing us the end of the movie at the beginning, and I was like, I didn't know a lot about. I just knew this was about the French Foreign Legion. I didn't know much about the plot of Beau Geste, so I was like, oh shit, this is a mystery.
Right.
I was like, if this was made today, it'd be made by Ryan Johnson, probably. I'd never watch it, but I don't like that Knives Out franchise. It's horrible.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I thought it was a good setup. I was impressed by the production design. I thought the fort looked really good. The costumes are good. Even the live action of them on the horses, and the stunt work, even of like climbing a rope up the side of a fort like that's not easy. And then one guy goes straight from the horse into the rope climb. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then everything took a turn, and I found my brain getting turned inside out, trying to understand the logic of some of it, and as we move forward. So, but initially, they set up this hook, and initially it really worked for me. I was like, I was invested very, very quickly. I didn't realize what I would have to experience to figure out this very convoluted plot in the end.
Right. How about you, Clement?
So I did not see that it was going to be the back before the front. Okay, so I was like, oh shoot, we're getting right into action. All right, not too bad. I was still focused on all the tactical mistakes that was going on with this military, and I'm gonna leave the safe fort and go to the water. But I guess if you thought a predator was in the fort, then maybe that would be the safest spot. But I was just trying to understand the whole, why is all of this? Why are people propped up? This seems like they were made as an example, like putting their heads on a pike or something.
Right.
That's what I was initially thinking. And then when they were like, so I read the message and I'm like, what does a sapphire have to do with what's going on here? And the only thing I could think of was back in these old cartoons of Bugs Bunny, when you have, I'm joining the French Foreign Legion to forget and to escape things. And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to, maybe somebody's forgot something, but they remembered. And then it does the, 15 years earlier, and it's a bunch of kids. And I'm like, all right, I'm out. I'm confused. I'm just going to let this one play out. And I'm like, how did we go from fighting to the Little Rascals? I don't know how that happened, but we're there.
I am so glad you said Little Rascals, because that's the first thing I thought too. When the kids popped up on screen, I was like, this is Little Rascals acting all the way. Like the next scene we see is these
an Enid Blyton book.
Yeah, there's like 5 kids, and they're standing by a pond, and right after we see what we're supposed to think at first, they trick you into thinking that you're seeing a big like pirate ship battle, like this big sea battle with these frigates and cannons and stuff. And then suddenly, as you as you back away from it and the camera pans over, you realize that they are toy ships in a pond, like almost like a, you know, like a garden pond. And these kids are standing there watching these ships literally shoot each other to pieces. And the first thing my brain went time, because I thought, I have never seen toy boats that detailed before, and with actual explosive miniature cannons on it. Like, obviously they rigged this up for the film, but were those really a thing back in the day for privileged children of means? Like, was that something they could have?
If they were, my thought was like, damn, and we thought the 80s was the best decade for toys. Like, I want these things.
Things are shooting actual bullets at one another. Yeah.
And then he just burned one down for the play.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude.
I know. I was like, these kids must be like Richie Rich, because to set one of those on fire just for fun is like, what? Like that. If I had had the flag and some kid had set it on fire, I'd have been like, what are you doing? Like,
it does set up what I think is the funniest moment of the film, but it takes a long run up. So they talk about, you know, the Viking funeral. So one of the kids goes into to get one of the boats out of the water, and he actually gets shot in the leg by one of the cannons. Right. Yeah. And they perform field surgery and burn a knife to get it out of his leg. Yeah. But then they say, we're going to give you a Viking funeral. So they put a little soldier down on there. And then they're saying a Viking funeral, they have to have a dog at its feet. So he goes and gets a little model dog and puts it there. And then they burn this ship down. And that is the longest run up I've seen to the biggest laugh that I got in this film much later on about dog at his feet. That made me laugh out loud, that bit.
I had to string together 52 seconds of clips just to show everybody a little bit of what we're talking about in this segment.
Don't worry.
Sorry, what?
I was like, no one alive is going to sue you for being an extra long. They're. I don't think any of those actors are going to be pissed.
Well, here we go. I think
we're safe on this one.
I think this is a silly game.
For that remark, ghastly Gussie, you're reduced from captain to a common seaman.
How much longer do I have to be a common seaman, Admiral? I knew something would happen.
I'm ready, Captain. Sit on him.
Yes, sir. Wait till Aunt Patricia hears about this.
There. That's what I want when my turn comes. I'd give anything to have a Viking's funeral. As soon as I get old enough, I'm going to join the Foreign Legion.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Me too.
I mean, you talk about suddenly watching a different film. I was, and then when the kid got shot by the boat and they bring
it was in the nads. I thought he got shot in the nads. The way he turned and where he put stuff, I was like, oh my child. I am so hurting for you.
Hot crackers, they got me in the scrotum.
Was anyone else just giggling through the first half of that when they're talking about, like, how long do I have to be a common seaman? And I just had all these jokes in my head. I had to go back and rewatch the scene because I wasn't paying attention. I just had seaman jokes going in my head.
And you're not alone, Tony, because Tim Hayes says, yeah, it looks like it was in the nutsack. But Ansel says, indeed, how long do I have to be a common seaman? So this
about 9 months.
Yeah, as Clement said, 9 months. So KBA, yeah, this needs a riff track. Yeah, for sure. Kids today do not understand the struggle of getting shot in the junk by your actual shooting toy boat. You know what? If it was the right kind of boat, he could have been shot in the junk by a junk.
Yeah.
So I think we lost Clement.
Clemens is frozen on us.
He's had it. He's done.
He just got shot in the nutsack by a boat.
All right, I guess I'm going to remove him until we can figure out what's going on with his. Are you back? Is he back? Nope, he's not back. Oh no. Oh, hello.
Sounds like Max Headroom.
I think his internet connection. What? We'll wait
Timothy
for
Ward says, "I'll be deleting semen posts in the comments for weeks."
Yeah. Yep. So we have this whole crazy moment where these kids are actually field dressing this wound by like lighting a penknife on fire to sterilize it and then having him bite down on a bullet, pulling the bullet out.
When they say, like, you know, it's what they do in the books, you know, bite down on a bullet.
Mm-hmm.
And he just happens to pull a bullet out of his pocket like he had it prepared. I was like,
which means
why is he got a bullet?
They're having to load those cannons with bullets, possibly. I don't know. I hope MasterSun comes back, but the show must go on. So here we go. MasterSun, if you're listening to this, we miss you and we love you and we want you to come back. Okay, there he is.
I don't.
Hi.
I don't know what happened.
So we were talking about the
We were making fun of you, Clement.
No, we were talking about the impromptu field dressing with the kid setting his penknife on fire in order to pull a bullet out of another kid. Like, that's not what I remember in my childhood.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah. So then their mother comes up and she is with a gentleman who's a friend of hers from the French Foreign Legion. He's an officer. He's a friend, yeah. And he's there because he wants to see her, but then he asks about her the health of her husband or whatever. And you learn that not only are the three guys, there's 5 children. There's that one nerdy little kid with the snitch, yes, and the daughter. They are siblings, and then the 3 kids who are in the paper hats doing all the sailor stuff, they are the Geste brothers, and so the tallest one there will become Gary Cooper, and then the other 2 will become Robert Preston and Ray Milland, which their names are Digby and John. So it's.
Did you just say they're the Geste brothers? I missed that. So hence the name of the wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And plus they switch the names out when they go in the Foreign Legion. So in the Foreign Legion, their last names aren't Geste, if I recall. But yeah, so it also gets more confusing because Beau's actual name is Michael. So, but they all call him Beau, which makes it even more confusing. But she tells the officer, her friend, that these are her 3 sort of adopted wards. They're orphans from a well-to-do family, and she's been raising them. And then he asks about her husband, and you find out that her husband is like this aristocratic deadbeat who ran off to the continent and squanders all their money gambling. So he's like, I assume he gambles in Paris and all over Europe, and so he's never around, and he's basically loaned out or sold off most of the estate for gambling money and to pay gambling debts. So the one thing that she has left of value besides the estate itself is this famous sapphire called the Blue Water. And he asks to see it. And she's like, sure. And she's like, this is the only thing of value that's really left besides the estate. It's worth 30,000 pounds. And he's like, yes, I've heard a lot about it, blah, blah, blah. Well, then the kids, a few days later, weeks, whatever it is, they decide to play King Arthur. And I assume it's because it's raining outside. So they assume, they got to play inside. So they're going to play King Arthur because there's a suit of armor in the foyer. And Michael, Beau, Gary Cooper, soon to be Gary Cooper. He says, well, I get to be in the suit of armor on the pedestal. You guys all have to be other knights and Queen Guinevere, and you got to go get stuff to put on to pretend that you're knights, and I'll tell you what to do because I'm King Arthur. So they all run off to go do that. And while they're doing that, the lady of the house comes home, and she's with what looks to be a Sikh emissary or something. He's got the Sikh turban on and everything. And the other kids aren't in the room, and they don't. The lady and the Sikh don't know that Beau is in the armor. And there's this exchange that takes place, but you don't hear any of the dialogue. And then when they all come running back out into the foyer and they help Beau out of the armor, he's real cagey about what he just witnessed. And I have a little bit of that here.
Incidentally, before I go, may I see this fabulous sapphire of Sir Hector's? I've been hearing about it clear across the world.
Takes your breath away. That's the great-great-grandfather of all sapphires.
That will be all, Burton.
Well, there goes our king.
He was from the Arabs. He wanted me to fight on their side against the Foreign Legion. And he asked Aunt Pat if I could go.
What did Aunt Pat say?
Well, no.
So they call him out on his BS because they know that he's lying. Wolfie, thank you for the super chat. He says, fantastic way to end the week, guys. I got hit in the junk when my toy junk boat was bombed by an RC Junkers Ju-87. Yeah. That's all the junks right
all
there.
The junks. Except for Retgar.
Say how much I enjoy the new RetroBlasting logo. Watching all these clips with the new RetroBlasting logo on the bottom, and I feel honored that it's the first war stories where this is happening. So
well, I realized when I was doing the clips today, I was like, oh, I got to take one extra step. I got to make sure that I don't have the old logo there. So that, it's nice to see everything in 2023 coming together. We've got the new logo. We've got our first war stories. Clement is in the intro. It's very exciting. It's all very exciting.
All done by Beau French.
We're not going there.
Michael Geste, French Foreign Legion.
Here we go. Yeah, if only I had Gary Cooper's shoulders. If only. All right. So at this point in the film, I can't speak for the two of you, but I was getting antsy. I was like,
I was bored.
Yeah. I was like, and I love classic movies. I have a ton of black and white films that I genuinely really enjoy. And I was kind of tap dancing. Like I didn't want to watch a film about kids. And anybody who watches RetroBlasting knows that I have this thing about, I don't want to watch movies where kids are protagonists most of the time. So what were you guys thinking at this point?
Same thing. It was like
I was regretting. Sorry, Clemens.
Oh, say this. I said I don't understand what this has to do with the other thing. I was waiting for that general or whoever came from the Foreign Legion to say something that's going to like click it all together. And when he came and left, I was like, well, I don't know what's going on. I just know that these kids, and they're saying they want to join the Foreign Legion, and the first scene was about it. I was like, I'm going to trust the process. That's what I was thinking.
What about you, Tony?
So I at this part of the film, I was like, I was the one who suggested this film. I really hope that Michael and Clemens will still be friends with me after this week. Like, this is not a war film at the moment. It gets a bit war-y later on. But yeah, we didn't know any better, did we?
Well, I'm gonna add to this that they do pay off the weird setup at the beginning that we showed you. We just got to get there. And a lot of that stuff, as the movie picks up, once they age up and get out of that house, the movie's interest factor picks up considerably. But there's a lot of
they could have done with editing a lot of that down and making it quicker, but different audience back in 39.
Oh yeah, 39. And that's the thing. There were a lot of heavy hitters in 39 movie wise that were coming out, like Gunga Din and this the gentleman we're going to see in a minute who plays Sergeant Markov. He had the same year he did this, he was in Destry Rides Again with Jimmy Stewart. He was the bad guy in that. So there was a lot of really cool films coming out in 39. And this one is, it was a critical hit then. So yeah, it's just, these were the hardest clips for me to do on any war stories I've done so far, because back then movies allowed scenes to breathe and lines to hang and things. And so I was looking at a sequence that was like, excuse me, it would be like 32 seconds long, but a modern film would convey all of that 32 seconds in 5. And so I'm kind of like, how do I pull this together so I don't get hit by the YouTube police? And Tim Hayes, I just want to tell you, I have seen all the Dead End Kids movies. The first one, Dead End, with Humphrey Bogart and Joel McCrea, that one actually works for me because Humphrey Bogart and Joel McCrea are the main characters and not the kids. The kids are supporting cast. So yeah. Okay. George Aitken, by the way, Tony, is still pushing Ice Cold and Alex. He wants us to do that for a War Stories at some point. So
we definitely will. Probably not the next episode, George, but we will definitely do it.
Yep. Okay. Next up. So at this point, the kids grow up finally. It cuts to a card and it says 15 years have passed, and now the kids are all adults. So now, instead of these...
But they're still acting like kids in the first scene.
Yes. Yes. Let's talk our way through that, because I didn't grab much of that. So who would like to describe what we first see these grown men doing?
Well, one of the three brothers is obviously he's in love with the young girl. But the other two,
I didn't see that at the beginning. I didn't see that until they said it later, and I was like, and as long as you said it, I'm going to say it.
That's creepy as the fuck. You grew up with her. She is basically your sister. You incestuous.
And for which they must be punished.
Please continue, Tony, but you don't do that. You don't do that.
And the other two grown men, one's got a broom, the other grabs the axe from the suit of armor to try and catch a mouse, and then they have this planning conversation around who should move the couch, and I was just shaking my head. The best actor in that scene is the mouse.
Right.
The mouse was really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very weird beginning. Of course, you find out that both of them, like, once they got the mouse, they don't want to kill it because they're not violent guys. They're so they talk themselves out of it, but in a way where they're like, oh, there's no reason for us to really do this at this point, because that would be really bad if we went downstairs with blood on our hands and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. So they just let the mouse go, and then they go downstairs where their brother John, played by Ray Milland, is leaning up against the piano, watching Susan Hayward play the piano, and I don't want to say their mother, but their benefactor, the lady of the house, comes in. She's just gotten a letter, and the letter doesn't have good news in it. And here's that sequence of events. If I can find where I am. Here we go. I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit here. So We're going to watch a little bit of this, and then we're going to explain what everybody just saw. All right, so here we go.
Well, I don't see what more he expects to get out of the estate.
You forget the blue water.
Why, he wouldn't sell the blue water, would he, Aunt Pat?
I'm afraid that's what he intends doing.
Aunt Pat, would you show us the blue water before you go? We may not get another chance to see it.
Very well. It looks like a piece of sky that had become solid.
Well, so somebody turned them off. Another jest joke? It's gone.
Why, it's impossible.
Somebody in this room took it.
Now, don't be any more of an ass than you can help, Ghastly. There's no one in this room but the family.
Well?
I don't want a scandal in Brandon Abbas. I will leave the box on the table until the morning. If the blue water is not back by then, of course I shall have to call the police. Good night.
Me. This one right here.
Yes, sir.
Couple things. Number one, I love all
just
people,
a couple,
but do rich white people generally hang out in tuxes all day and just formal? That's what you do. You get your good pearls on and just hang.
I think the aristocracy at that time, yes, they did. That was like their evening wear. If you've watched like Downton Abbey and stuff in that part of the world, that's what they did. That was still like an old world holdover that took a long time to, yeah. As a matter of fact, American moguls of the late 19th, early 20th century tried to emulate that. The Rockefellers and the Morgans and the Winchesters, they all tried to emulate that British aristocracy thing at that time. It's weird. It's very Lord Grantham type stuff.
Two, this whole little diamond sapphire thing goes disappearing, and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna leave and it'll turn up in the morning. You got that kind of dollars? Hey, if I'm missing $20, we locking the doors. Everybody up against the wall because you all getting frisked. She's just like, yeah, whoever did it, we'll just give it back in the morning.
She didn't want a scandal. She didn't want to have to call the police. She thought that her sons were just being funny, but none of them admit to it in the moment. That the diamond or the sapphire's been taken.
And this was after they turned the lights back out and said, we'll turn the lights out, and whoever took it, they just put it back because it was a joke.
Right.
And she did that and they didn't put it back. I'm like, oh, so it's not a joke. Up against the wall, put your hands above your head. Right. I'm frisking every last one of you.
Right. I'm gonna get Alfred in here and he's gonna hold everybody down and we're gonna do this. Yeah. And the scene I didn't show right after this is that two of the brothers take pleasure in beating up the snitch son just because.
That was okay.
Yeah,
that was a good scene. I hate that dude. That dude just he has a very punchable face when he was a kid and when he grew up. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was great casting. So
it was.
The thing with me is the whole premise of this film, it's set up at the start at the fort with this mystery, which gets paid off at the end. But then when they're all standing around the table looking at the blue sapphire and the lights go out, they never explained who turned the lights out. Like, we figure out who got the sapphire.
Yeah.
At the end of it, I was like, I still don't get how from standing where he was, he turned the lights out.
True.
Let's just ride right past that and just not write it into the script.
Dead.
Yeah. What was it the officer says when he doesn't find, when he goes back up and the bodies are missing? He's like, never mind.
I think that can best be summed up in the writing of this as one of those areas where they just didn't want to have to deal with that little problem. So they just said, we care more about the drama than we do about making it logical. That's not an excuse. I agree with you, Tony. I really do.
A life of excellence is a boring life. I think we also need just comforting mediocrity.
So they could have had the butler come in and when the power came out and say, we blew a fuse or whatever they had back then. And you could have said they took it because it was an opportunity theft. Now that would have still been a stretch,
Mm-hmm.
but another stretch is how, as it said in the comments section, he apparently used the Force, turned the lights out from where he was, and then took it.
Tony, I know you had a thought.
It's probably why the silent film was so well received, because they didn't have to explain stuff like that in a silent film.
George Aiken has the best answer I've seen.
That Richard, I always pronounce his name wrong. That Richard Iowati clip you just played. That is 99% of the YouTube comments on my channel these days.
Oh man. So they go to bed. The mother says, look, if it's just end your joke tonight, put it back, and if it's not back in the morning, I will have to call the police, because the lord of the house is cabling from the continent, and he's going to sell the sapphire because he needs more money for his damn gambling. And everyone's worried because it's the only thing of value the estate has left. So in the middle what's that?
It's a jest joke. That's a great line.
Yeah.
Is this another jest joke? I was like, no wonder they're called the Jest Brothers and not the Beau Geste Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the middle of the night, two of the brothers individually, Digby and John, both go downstairs to try and see if, the sapphire's been put back. And this is where, for me, the behavior of the brothers really starts to get weird, and I don't quite understand it, but we have to get into it a little bit before I can express my confusion. So here's a little bit of that sequence.
Read this.
Where do you think he went?
Where would you go if you want to disappear completely and still have some excitement?
Foreign Legion?
So would Beau.
So they just know automatically that even though he's got a $30,000 gem, they say he's going to go join the Foreign Legion. And even though his letter said, I'm going to go live in the lap of luxury and I'm not going to share it, don't follow me. Maybe we have to assume that because the brothers know him better than we do, that they know he's not really going to do that. But my thought is, if we take it at face value, why would anybody that suddenly has $30,000 of their own money join the Foreign Legion except to erase their identity and start over after the fact? But it just seems like a huge risk, given that you've just pocketed $30,000 to go off and possibly get killed in a 5-year commitment to the Foreign Legion. You would think that you could find some corrupt country to live in on that kind of money back then.
And I had to look it up of what is the equivalent of $30,000 back in like the 1900s, and it's a little bit over 1 million. So
right,
she just didn't care about this $1 million thing. Just it'll be there in the morning.
Right,
$1 million. You got $1 million. Yeah.
I didn't think the film explained it all that well. I think what I'm talking about is joining the French Foreign Legion. You signed up for 4 years or 5 years or whatever, but you were given a new identity. So the Foreign Legion was known for taking all kinds of criminals, and if you could make it, whatever you had done in the past would be erased once you got out. And I feel like the film doesn't explain it very well, because I feel it was the whole mystique around the French Foreign Legion was already very well known in the pop culture of the time. There was a lot of pulp magazines and stories and things like that. So for someone today kind of going back and watching it, it's like that needed to be explained a little bit more. But it's basically, he's got to do 5 years in the Foreign Legion to survive, to get out and then be called Michael, whatever his name is now.
Right. It's like Jones.
And then he can do whatever he wants. And it's like he's absolved from the theft of that jewel 5 years ago. But yeah, I would have just gone to Australia.
Jedi Fife, thank you so much for showing up in the super chat. He says, "Hey, Michael, Tony, and Masterson, great live stream. Good to see you, sir."
That's your friend, Brad, is it?
Yep, that's Brad.
Yeah.
Yep, good guy. Great prop replica guy. Very, very
I
talented.
enjoyed that stream you did with him. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, cool guy.
Oh, amazing collection.
Amazing collection. Yeah. No, he didn't name himself Michael French. I think his name was something like Michael Jones or something like that, if I recall, when he changed his name. All right. On to the next bit. So when John realizes that in the morning that now Digby has also left. In the morning, John wakes up and Digby has left him a letter saying, "I've gone to chase after Beau. Good luck with your life," or whatever. And he says in the letter that he did it because while he doesn't believe Beau is guilty of this, he wants to shield his brother John from it as well, the potential guilt and the investigation and everything. So he thought it would help if he also fled to defray suspicion onto them rather than him, because they knew that he was in love with Isabel, Susan Hayward. So John goes up to Susan Hayward, tells her that this letter from Digby is now here at his doorstep, and both of his brothers have run off, and they've probably joined the Foreign Legion or something. So he's going to go after them, because with this investigation about to happen into the theft of this sapphire, even though they've run off, he has to now protect and shield her from embarrassment because they were almost going to be an item. So she promises to wait for him, and he runs off to join the Foreign Legion. And when he gets to the fort and he's all signed up and he's in the group of new recruits, he immediately sees his brothers in uniform on the other side of the marching ground or whatever, the courtyard there. And they're all excited to see him. He's excited to see them. But Sergeant Markov, who is their, NCO, he picks up immediately on the fact that these guys know each other, and he is an asshole. So here's this little bit right here. Oh, the other thing I shouldn't leave out in this bit, because I realize as I'm looking at it, this is a minute-long clip of stuff strung together. That's how this movie is, everybody. Is in order to encapsulate everything that goes on, I had to make bigger and bigger clips to pull these events together. The short version is that Markov tells all the new recruits how it's going to be, that he's a harsh NCO and he's going to teach them discipline. And if not, then they're probably going to die, or he's going to kill him himself. Like he's a real jerk. The brothers, reunite in the barracks. This little Weasley dude who just rejoined the Legion, that you get the sense that he's a pickpocket or something. Markov hates the guy and he's like, "Oh, you're back already." He overhears the three brothers talking about the sapphire. And this is where the story gets really weird for me, is because all three brothers are all sitting there denying that the other brother stole the sapphire. They're all claiming to have stolen it in this smug kind of way, which is really confusing. And then the thief guy runs off and waits. And then when they all go to bed that night, a few months later or whatever it is, he tries to steal the gem out of Gary Cooper's pocket. He literally tries to pat Gary Cooper down while he's sleeping. And so Gary Cooper wakes up with his brothers and the rest of the barracks, and they start beating the shit out of him. So here's this whole bit. Here we go.
Attention!
Never have done a day's work in your life, have you?
Yes, sir.
I'll manicure those before we're through. I am Sergeant Markov. I make soldiers out of scum like you, and I don't do it gently.
He didn't steal the blue water. Neither did you.
No. As a matter of fact, I've got it.
I'll be frank with you, gentlemen. I've got it. The great sapphire is in my possession. And as soon as I can arrange to sell it, I'm going to the South Seas.
I get the whole thing with the thief wanting to like steal a gem. That makes sense because the guy's a thief, right? So he's back in the French Foreign Legion because he's a failure, like, you know. But what I don't get is the scene just prior to that where they're sitting there all telling the other person, no, I've got the gem. No, I've got the gem. No, I've got the gem. I didn't understand why three brothers would behave that way. And as somebody who has a brother, it really didn't make a lot of sense to me. That whole character dynamic didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was
kind of thinking it was like, I'm going to take it away from you knowing that your brother stole anything. Because if I say I got it and you say you got it, you may really think someone's got it. Now you put that doubt into each other's brain, and you can tell you're all covering for each other. So that's the only thing I can see. The conversation, of course, was just dumb, but that's the only thing I can see is them always trying to shield each other, kind of thing.
The dialogue was so, even though at that point it's not really established who has the gem, it seemed like the dialogue was just trying to mislead the audience it further rather than something that those three people would actually say to one another in a conversation. Like, I wonder if that conversation, because overall this movie is very accurate to the book in the major plot beats, but I kept wondering with conversations like that if that was just something that was thrown into the script for the movie, because I'm like, I don't see human beings talking to one another like this. Why are they all denying it rather than all getting together and figuring out? It's like, do the brothers just not want to admit to the other brothers? I don't know. I was really getting confused.
What sort of mind games are you playing?
I was just like, anyway. Okay.
That's how I felt.
Yeah. So how are we all feeling at this point in the film? Everybody knows how I feel. How do you guys feel?
I like the performance of the actor who plays Sergeant Markov. I believe he was nominated for an Academy Award.
Brian Dunleavy. Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah. But I was just like, when's this movie gonna kick into gear? This should have been a 90-minute film, not a 2-hour film. But obviously we're a modern day audience looking at a film that was made 80 years ago, 85 years ago, something.
Yep. Pretty shocking to think about when you put it in those terms. This movie's basically a century old.
Yes.
Yeah. It was made the year Clement was born.
Right before he was frozen. Save America in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
He was frozen earlier in the stream.
Markov takes the little weasel thief guy out and throws him in the stockade because they caught him trying to rob Gary Cooper, and then he grills him on why he was doing it and susses everything out.
They have a great jewel worth 30,000 pounds that they stole.
They?
The other two. They are brothers, and they're waiting for a chance to sell it.
Some of the company go to Fort Tokatu for mounted infantry training. It can be arranged. And if there's no jewel, you'll get a wooden jewel box.
So he said he's like, I'm gonna get this gem from this guy now that you've told me what is up with him. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to split these brothers up so that not all three of them are in the same regiment or group anymore. We can make that happen. And he does.
Markov knows that this guy is a thief and a liar, but he instantly believes this guy who got caught trying to steal something. And by the way, another thing in this movie, they sleep hard. Like in this movie, everybody is this super deep sleep. They don't hear anything. You know, you gotta do some damage. But all of this, and he turns around and believes the guy that he knows instantly about this very far-fetched idea, and he just is like, okay, we're gonna take care of this. And that kind of was like, that kind of fooled me. I was just like, no, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, it's it is a little odd that guy who had already called out that thief for re-enlisting, he knows that he's a ne'er-do-well, and you know, I know he's threatening him to tell him the truth and stuff, but even when the guy is like saying, "Oh no, I swear to God, please don't, you know, kill me, hit me, whatever. This is the truth." Even with that, with a guy like that, would a dude like Markov ever really trust that guy's word? Like it, I don't think so. But again, what did you think, Tony?
I got nothing. Exactly. Yes.
This is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. He's anorexic.
So all right. He splits them up, and he puts Digby in as a bugler with that one cavalry, and then he says, the rest of you guys are with me, and we're going to go reinforce this fort, and that way those guys are split up. And then he says, when I'm out at this fort, that's when I can make my move on this Michael guy and get his gem. So they take off for the fort. Now, once they get to the fort, the lieutenant, the actual commanding officer, I don't know if he's a lieutenant or a colonel or whatever he is, he comes down with a fever. And they kind of do this sort of like mild time lapse where you know it's been a little while since they've been at the fort. Two guys, the guys in the barracks are talking about how two guys have already deserted, and everyone's wondering, like, are they going to make it? Are they going to get caught? Are they going to get brought back? Are they going to die in the desert? Who knows? Everyone's ticked because their actual commanding officer's been laid up in bed dying of this fever, and Markov has basically been in charge, and everybody hates Markov. So they start talking about mutiny, and how would life be better trying to traverse across the desert to get to Morocco? And other people are like, no, as bad as Markov is, we have water and food and provisions here. We might as well just stay here and tough it out. And a bunch of other guys are like, nah. So there's this kind of moment, and then where they're all, you can tell that the dissatisfaction is creeping into the garrison. And in the background, the deserters get caught and brought back in. And Markov has everybody line up to show them how he's going to punish these deserters.
How's Lieutenant Martin?
Worse?
I haven't prayed in a long time, but I'm going to pray for him.
You'd better. Think of Markov in command. I wonder where Renault and Renouf are this morning.
Dead, with their mouths full of sand. It's no use to desert.
Oh, what's the difference whether you get death inside the walls or out?
There's a chance inside. We'll leave that pig Markov well stuck. And you'd be well stuck before you ever got to Morocco.
The Arabs would never dare attack so large a group.
After the desert, Zindernoff doesn't seem so bad, huh?
No, Sergeant.
The punishment for desertion is death by the firing squad. But I'm going to be merciful. I insist that you escape.
No, let us stay. Give us a...
Get out. Drive them out where you found them. Keep them away from the oasis.
It's like, I'm not going to kill you even though it's within my rights. I'm just going to let you escape again. And they're like, please don't, you know, and he's like, get them out of here, but make sure when you take them out that they can't run over to the left to the oasis. Just kick them out the other way so they die horribly.
And why does he sound like William Dafoe? That's every time he opens his mouth, I hear William Dafoe.
Maybe Willem Dafoe was inspired by Brian Donlevy in the same way that Christian Slater was inspired by Jack Nicholson. Or maybe Brian Donlevy and Willem Dafoe have the same brain damage where they're both crazy. You know? Oh man,
I did like when you're talking about the commanding officer. You know, he comes down with this fever, and Sergeant Markov kind of celebrates his death because now he's in charge and he's got the opportunity to quell this mutiny and become an officer himself. But when that commanding officer, there's an interaction where the sergeant goes in, and the officer is like laying in bed with this horrendous fever. He's dying. And he's got a lit cigarette in his hand. I'm like, that would be me. Dying of a fever, still trying to smoke a cigarette.
Men were stronger back then.
Yeah. Yep. They ate steak and eggs for every breakfast, and they smoked before they even had breakfast, and black coffee that wouldn't even pour out when you dumped the cup over. And
I don't know if you've ever seen the film the King's Speech, which is about you know, in World War II, where the new English king, he had this horrible stammer, but with he had to be able to deliver speeches on radio, so he goes to this speech therapist, and one of the first things the speech therapist says to him is, "You can't smoke anymore." He's like, "But my doctor says that smoking helps regulate my breathing." That's what doctors thought back in 1939.
Yes, right. Yeah. It was and of course, obviously, movies back then, no matter when they were set, and that they really had problems with this all the way up through the 80s. I think is when they would set a movie in a historical time period, Hollywood tended to let hairstyles and other things of the present day leak into those period pieces. And so, like you're saying, like we were just coming out of the Roaring 20s. So yeah, the cigarettes and everything was still very glamorous and stuff like that. And a lot of actors have said, you know, smoking in movies helped you have something to do with your hands in a scene.
Yeah.
Okay. So where are we? Oh yeah. They send the deserters back out, and then there's more talk about this mutiny behind closed doors, and it gets heated, and they confront Beau, Michael, Gary Cooper about it, and this is what happens.
Markov has been asking for it, and now he's going to get it.
Can't you see a mutiny is what Markov wants?
Well, I don't like Markov, but also I don't like you. There'll be a flag flying out there in the morning that I swore to uphold. Armies of good men have died for it, gladly. It's a battle flag, and it's a flag of victory. I'm rather proud to be under it.
All of this really, to me, that sort of speech that he gives, it's not really a speech, it's like a miniature speech right there where he emphatically says, I am not going to betray the French Foreign Legion, because it's been his boyhood dream to be in the French Foreign Legion, regardless of the circumstances that got him there. But if anybody in the chat has ever seen Sergeant York with Gary Cooper, I feel like this movie was almost like the proto movie, sort of like the runway that led to Sergeant York in that moment, you know, like, because in Sergeant York, he has that whole conflict of conscience where he doesn't know if he should follow his God or his constitution, or and then he has moments of moral certainty like that in that film as well, where he plays a World War I soldier. So I felt like that was one of the strongest parts of the film, where he, you know, says, I'm not going to mutiny with you brigands. I will not do that, regardless of how much I don't like this Markov guy. Let's talk about mutiny for a minute. So what was the scuttle? Obviously, MasterSun, it's difficult to mutiny in a fighter jet. But I mean, I'm sure there was some kind of discussion that went on, not about mutiny, but with you guys about, like, is there any talk in the modern military about, like, just mutiny as a concept? I don't mean like you guys were actually planning it. I just mean as a concept.
They talk about things. So one of the things from me being enlisted first and then becoming an officer, one of the things in some of the officer training is they talk about all these officers who got killed by their own people in Vietnam. and the term fragging, about rolling a frag, because you can't shoot them, because then you can figure out the bullet was, American bullet, and then be like, all right, who shot him?
Unless you're Oliver Stone, and then you can shoot them. But
then you can shoot them, yes. But you roll a grenade in there, and the fragmentation, you can't tell where it came from. So there was all of this of, don't be such an ass that people want to kill you. And some people are just naturally an ass, and they think that their leadership style that they'll say, but I think it's just crappy leadership, is to be hard. They're the people who say, how long is this going to take? It's going to take 30 minutes to fix it. You got 20. And they're like, that is great leadership. No, it's not. It's being an ass. So you don't really talk too much about it. I've seen all those movies and stuff, and I knew, like, hey, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be like that. But it's never really discussed that, what do you do? The only thing I knew is, did you know the reason why officers carried revolvers in the Civil War and not rifles? So they can shoot the people who run away. And I'm just like, what? Oh yeah. So, you can maybe die going that way, or you can definitely die trying to run back. But yeah, that's kind of it. It wasn't a real big topic or anything.
It's a very Russian mentality, isn't it? Like World War II Russian. What about you, Tony?
It was definitely something that was clearly explained to me in the British Army. Don't quote me on this. I believe it's one of the few offences in all of the United Kingdom, military or otherwise, that you can actually still get the death penalty for.
Yeah,
mutiny and treason.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly something that I ever came across during my time in the military. Like, probably the closest example is after I left the military and I was doing private security work. Bear in mind, a lot of the guys doing private security work were very experienced soldiers. They were very professional soldiers. They had not necessarily come from the special forces, but they had come from elite units such as the Parachute Regiment, the Royal Marine Commandos, things like that. And I had a guy who had joined my team, and after about 6 or 8 months of him being on the team, he was continually challenging all of my decision making, openly disagreeing with me and trying to change the plan. And it got to the point where I had to have him moved out of the team because it was disrupting the cohesiveness of the team. It was, personally, the guy was just lazy. When I was, okay, we might not necessarily have had to go on this mission or make this mission extend a day. This guy just wanted to get back to his room at Talil Air Base and play Xbox. Well, I was like, no, I know we don't have to do another day, but it will be beneficial. We can gather some more intelligence. I was very, very, I was there to do a job, and I wanted to do the job. And this guy was always trying to undermine that. But yeah, the concepts of mutiny in modern military is it's a very rare thing. People don't get drafted anymore and stuff like that. A lot of people, even though when they end up in the military, they might go, shit, this wasn't a good idea. There's not enough of them to ever spark a mutiny. I also like to think that there aren't as many leaders like Sergeant Markov around anymore.
It was, I just felt like, there were some people when we chose this movie that were questioning whether or not this was a war story. And what I did was I told them, I said, well, there are, throughout history, there are Cold Wars that happen, or large eras of occupation that you could see as a prolonged conflict between two people. And this film is historically based in one of those periods of time with real contingents of military forces. The story within it, much like Where Eagles Dare, is a fictionalized story, but the backdrop for the story is real. And so in that sense, when they started talking about the mutiny and you started seeing the life of the soldier being explored in this, I was like, yeah, this is definitely a war story applicable film.
I think in hindsight, having watched it, it's
Mhm.
kind of more of an adventure tale,
Right.
but it's certainly the scenes we're about to start discussing. Like
Mhm.
it's war.
Yeah.
You know, the French Foreign Legion are in a fort and they're being attacked by Arabs on camels, who are
Yes.
probably white people with the same makeup artist that turned John Wayne into Genghis Khan. But
oh man, I'm just as always. It wouldn't be a War Stories if StreamYard didn't drop one of my clips. So I just got the clip back in there. That's what I was doing.
Well, while you're doing that, I want to throw a question out to the chat, a little kind of off topic. So we're talking about, what kind of fits war stories. And what me and Michael have always said is that it has to be set in a real war. Would something like the Iranian embassy siege in London be considered a war film?
It's a real historical backdrop of a military action, so I would say yes.
Anytime you are a combat person
Mm-hmm.
and you're getting shot at, just because they didn't declare war, I think it still qualifies.
Right.
Because if that's the case, then we can never show it a Vietnam movie because it wasn't declared a war. It was a conflict. Can't show Korean.
Mm-hmm.
We could never do like Oh Dark 30 if we ever decide to do something like that. I mean, there's I don't know. It's kind of nitpicky. I think the main basis is it needs to have a war aspect, and it needs to be a good chunk of what that movie is about.
Yeah.
And not just like, I don't know, the one movie that I can think that I love, but I don't know if it would necessarily fit, would be like Courage Under Fire. Because it was a war thing, but the majority of the movie was not in there. They only used clips of stuff of what happened.
I would still consider that a war stories, because the title of the show, it's War Stories about war. Like I would even suggest that we could one day potentially even do so something like, not that I necessarily want to tackle this movie, but Born on the 4th of July. There's only about 15 minutes of that film is actually set in Vietnam, but that's a war story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the one we've always used as the example of what's not a war story despite having a lot of military action in it is First Blood. As much as I love First Blood, it is a fictionalized domestic disturbance movie that takes place later outside the backdrop of historical context. So it's an allegory rather than a war story. Whereas even a fictional film that uses something like this movie, for example, or like Four Feathers is another great example. The Four Feathers is not taking place in a textbook war. It's taking place in a prolonged action against the Mahdi, which was an actual thing that happened where the Mahdi of the Sudan was fighting against the British for quite a long time. So it is a military action in a historical backdrop, but it's not the War of 1812 or the 100 Years War, or it's a harder thing to pin down. But it's not Brian Dennehy, local sheriff, versus crazy guy who wandered into town. It's not that. Anyway, sorry for taking us down that rabbit hole, but
that's all right. It's interesting seeing what the chat is. It's kind of looking like 50-50. Some of them are saying like, no, Iranian embassy siege wouldn't be a war scenario.
It was in newspapers and the SAS were called out and it was a whole thing. So I disagree.
So, I don't know. Do you guys know? So the Prime Minister at the time, Margaret Thatcher, the guys were based in Regent's Park Barracks, which, little bit of trivia, is now actually the base for A Squadron of the SAS Reserve. That's the unit I was a member of. I was based out of Regent's Park Barracks in London. So the regular SAS guys who stormed the embassy out in Hereford. They set up basically camp at Regent's Park Barracks. And just prior to raiding the building, they had a brief from Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who every one of the guys has said afterwards, Margaret Thatcher's instructions were, none of them get out alive. Some of them did, but they went in there with it was like, you're not going in to arrest or capture these terrorists.
Right.
Make a statement. We do not negotiate with terrorists. She wanted them all dead.
Right. Did they ever track the rest of them down?
Oh, they. So what? I believe it was one of them. There was 5 or 6 terrorists. One of them actually disguised himself as one of the hostages and got out with the hostages.
Right.
And they eventually they killed 5. They were looking for the other guy. They found him outside. And one of the SAS guys picked him up and went to walk him back inside the building. When the commanding officer said, no, there's TV crews everywhere. He's just going to have to be arrested. They were going to take him back inside and execute him.
Right.
That was their intent. But because of the news coverage, they couldn't do it.
Right. Got it. Yeah, I would say that acute moments like that where the military is involved are definitely war stories for sure. Okay, so they're arguing about the mutiny again, and they put Beau and John and a few other guys who are not about this mutiny thing that you saw in the clip. They kind of put them up against the wall and say, after we kill Markov, we're going to kill you, because
that's kind of, I'm like, hey dude, I'm just not about it. I'm not going to stop you.
Right.
Don't turn around and kill me because you guys want to go and do this and haul butt out in the desert. I'm just like, hey, dude, I'm going to act like I didn't know nothing about it. I couldn't be trusted with your mutiny, and have a nice day, because I don't like the dude anyway.
And I think it led to the best line. It's all subjective.
Yes.
But for me, the best line in the movie is right here after they say, we're going to kill you after we deal with Markov. And the 3 of them are just like, whatever, dude. And they go back to their bunk and they just kind of sit there for a minute and talk. And this is the exchange.
What can we do?
Outside of prayer, I can't think of a thing.
You're the older brother. It's up to you.
Oh, when the shooting starts, we just shoot at everybody. It makes it simpler.
I love that line. Well, when the shooting starts, I guess we just shoot at everybody. It makes it simpler. I love that line. And I thought that was really good acting on Gary Cooper's part. Markov, of course, comes in and tells them that the commanding officer has finally succumbed to his illness, and now Markov's in charge until a new commanding officer is assigned to the fort. And he does his threatening, sinister thing.
Another little matter I almost forgot. Jewel you stole. I want it.
I have no jewel.
I know you have.
I haven't.
I advise you to change your mind. Otherwise, when this is over, I may have to shoot you to make sure.
So he's threatening Beau with, give me the jewel or I'm going to kill you, even as Beau is helping him in that moment avert a mutiny. Because one of the guys who pretended to be part of the mutiny group just to stay in their good graces ran off in the middle of the night and told Markov, all these dudes are going to mutiny on you in the morning. And he's like, who? And he's like, everybody except Beau, John, and this American guy.
And like, just for the record, it was the main person who was talking about mutiny.
Yes. Was
the one who went and snitched on everybody and said they're going to mutiny. I didn't understand what his purpose and his motivation was. I'm assuming it's just to get in good with them and maybe rise in the ranks. I don't know.
Or just
by this point of the movie, I had just given up trying to understand character motivation.
I was sitting back going, okay, so this guy's just one of those guys who's always going to try and sit at the right hand of the devil rather than be in his path. Like, the devil in the moment is the guy preaching mutiny. So I'm going to be at his right hand But then as soon as that guy goes to sleep, I'm going to go find the bigger devil and make sure I'm at his right hand before all this goes down. The one thing I did find, it was an odd thought in my head when he confronted Markov about it was, he's kind of a rat bag, but at least he was nice enough to make it clear that Gary Cooper, Ray Milland, and the other guy aren't in on this. Like, I was like, that was nice. He could have thrown everybody under the bus.
Yeah, but he need help. He can't go there with like 3 people.
Right.
And try to hold. Well, I mean, they were sound sleepers, so he probably could have. But I also thought that Gary Cooper's character did the most piss poor job of denial that I have ever heard. If someone comes to me and goes, you give me that jewel, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you talking about? What? I don't know. Do more of. I have no idea what you're even talking about.
Mm-hmm.
His thing, and he's like, I don't know, and he looks kind of like sideways, and I'm just like, yeah, you got it right now. And then you can't tell me you're going to kill me later and hand me a rifle. If you tell me you're going to kill me later and you give me a rifle, I'm killing you now. I don't understand that. And that was a theme throughout the whole.
Yeah.
That got me.
It is weird the way Gary Cooper knows this guy has it out for him, especially now that he's directly threatened him with death. I'm going to murder you for your belongings. And Gary Cooper's still like, I'm not going to mutiny and I'm not going to play this guy's game. It's very, very strange. And then they round up everybody. Gary Cooper, his brother, the other American guy, and the little weasel turncoat all hold rifles on the rest of the garrison. And Markov says, you guys are all going to get executed for mutiny now, meaning all the guys that were in on the mutiny. And we're going to start with the 2 ringleaders. And then he announces to the whole crowd, he's like, and I'm going to let my 2 most loyal soldiers have the privilege of executing the 2 ringleaders first. And he picks Gary Cooper and his brother. So he's already trying to make it look like they're even worse than they are, like that they were the snitches, even though they weren't. And then one of the coolest moments in the movie happens at that point, right here.
Ready. Aim. You hear me?
Very plainly.
Then do your duty.
It's not our duty to shoot down unarmed men.
You refuse to obey your superior?
I don't think you'll shoot Markov. You haven't enough men behind you now.
Tuareg's coming. A great haka. We were surprised.
Spare tracks in the Arabs. Bugler, sound the alarm. Pass out the arms and ammunition. Get your rifles. Take your post.
Good thing he didn't kill everybody at that point, because he needed the whole garrison, because the Bedouin army shows back up and they're going to try and take out the fort again. So he needs every rifle. And then
you just said you're going to kill me, and now you give me all a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to keep going because this is going to come up again.
Okay.
I'm going to say something else later.
Okay.
Did anyone else notice the really unusual pair of shoes that Sergeant Markov was wearing in that scene? Like, everyone else was barefoot, and he had a really odd-looking pair of shoes on.
Really? Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's do an instant replay.
Ready. Aim. You hear me?
Very plainly.
Then do your duty.
It's not our duty to shoot down unarmed men.
You refuse to obey your superior?
I don't think you'll shoot Markov. You haven't enough men behind you now.
Tuareg's coming. A great haka. We were surprised.
Spare tracks in the Arabs. Bugler, sound the alarm. Pass out the arms and ammunition. Get your rifles. Take your post.
He's wearing orthopedic tennis shoes.
They look like they were like supposed to be formal wear.
Yeah, the rest of the movie, he wears these like really high laced up boots.
Uh-huh.
I was like, "You wearing tennis shoes, bro?"
Yeah, he looks like he's wearing like something that you would see like the Golden Girls wearing. Like it's a kind of white, retiree sneaker or a loafer or something like that. Yeah, I wonder if the actor, for whatever reason, did not want to or couldn't walk around barefoot in the sand or something like that. I wonder if
Well, I imagine like sand gets pretty hot if you're in a nice environment. You know, I was like, how long did those? Here in Australia, you can't walk on the beach in summertime. You've got to have flip flops or whatever you call it. Here in Australia, we call them thongs. I know that means something else over there, but he's frozen again.
I never want to see Tony wearing thongs.
You've seen me wearing thongs.
No. We're not going to do this.
Okay. We're almost there. We've almost brought the whole thing back around. So Markov and all the men start holding off the Bedouin horde. And as they're doing this, it's like a war of attrition. You know, it's a battle of attrition. They're losing men every now and then. And Markov comes up with this idea, hey, just because we've got a corpse here doesn't mean the corpse isn't useful.
That's the place for our mutineers, up on a roost like pigeons. If I could only afford to waste them all. Everybody does his duty and send enough, dead or alive.
I will say that was probably the smartest thing that he has done the whole time. His saying afterwards was horrible. He could have made that into the smart, like, maybe this guy is a tactical genius. But if he would have said, you know, we put him up there, we still look like we're strong, blah, blah, blah. No, he chose, even if you're dead, you're going to do your duty again. He had it. He almost had it, and then he messed that up.
Right. Well, now we come to a scene that MasterSun specifically requested be in the show tonight. And it may or may not. I don't know what MasterSun's about to say about this, since you just said that Markov comes close to being a tactical genius despite his madness and his sadism. Whether this lends itself to that, like the genius side or the sadism side. But as things are happening and more guys are getting killed, he's continuing to put out the illusion that the fort is still fully garrisoned, so that the Bedouin outside still think they've got a lot of people to deal with. And he has them all start laughing. Every single guy that's still alive, he starts to get them to laugh so that the Bedouin will hear what might sound like a bunch of guys laughing inside the walls.
Now, my children, I want some happy laughter. Lots of it. Jones.
What I wanted that in there is for people to go,
this sumbitch crazy. Okay, all the people on his side should have went, he's lost it. He's gone. His head, he is completely done. We got to get rid of him. And here's the thing, I'm gonna say to Tony about this. Tony, you are defending a whole fort. Are you going to use a rifle or a pistol?
A rifle.
How much accuracy do you think the sergeant is doing with that pistol when they're 50 yards, 100 yards away?
None.
So he is not contributing to the fight at any means. So therefore, we don't need him right now, do we?
They should have popped a cap in his ass. That's all I'm saying. Long time ago. The dude's crazy. Pop a cap.
I will say this. I have never seen anyone be able to carry around dead bodies the way this guy can.
Oh,
How
yeah.
heavy dead bodies are.
Oh, he's slinging people. And they just stand up there like rigor mortis is set in already. They are that stiff. Yeah. But
what I hear you saying, Clement, I think is
I hate him with all my heart.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sitting here just going, how long are you going to put up with this? He has basically threatened to kill everybody in there at one point. Every single person in there, he has said he is going to kill them at one point or another. And yet, you guys are still like, yeah, we got to keep doing this. We got to follow this guy. I was like, were people dumber back then? That's just my question, I don't know.
It's a kind of, in all seriousness, it's a kind of silver screen trope back then in pre-war war films. There was a kind of, like in a lot of the Errol Flynn movies back before World War II started, like Charge of the Light Brigade and a lot of that Rudyard Kipling stuff. And there was that kind of thing going on with, loyalty to flag and country and all that kind of stuff. And it's a theme that runs through some of these films.
Jason Anderson, Weekend at Markov's.
That's funny.
That is a good one. That's how does he come up with this stuff? I don't know. He always has one or two. He just throws out there.
Oh, it's more than one or two. Like,
yeah, because everyone said, "Is this where the idea for Weekend at Bernie's came from?" Oh, that's funny. Oh man. All right, so Markov. Then the garrison finally gets whittled down to like the remaining 4 people. It's Markov, Gary Cooper, his brother John, played by Ray Milland, and I think one other guy. And another round of attacks happen. And Beau/Michael/Gary Cooper is shot, and he's shot fatally. And so we have this little altercation.
Leave my brother's body alone.
Go below and bring me some bread and wine.
If you touch him, I'll kill you.
So he had no jewel, huh?
I told you to leave my brother's body alone.
He's got a little bit of life left in him to help his brother get the best of Markov, and they dispatch him with a bayonet before he can shoot John. Then Gary Cooper gives John the instructions. He says, look, I've got these 2 letters, and one of them, I need you to give one of them, I need you to put one of them, the one that confesses to the robbery or theft of the sapphire, put that in Markov's hand. He's like, then take the jewel and take this second letter for our mother, the lady, whatever, and get out of here. And then he dies. And there's sadness, because the main character just died, and it's very, in the 1930s way, it's very emotional. It's
no, why?
Something like that. And then he does this really great jump off the back of the fort, which was a really cool stunt. I don't know how the stuntman didn't break both of his ankles doing it.
He wore orthopedic tennis shoes.
Right. And so the plot from the scene from the beginning is finally being filled in. It's all coming together where we now know why the body that we now know is Markov's, why it had the letter in his hand. We now are seeing John take the other stuff from Gary Cooper's body. he jumps off the back because they hear the cavalry having shown up, and he's got to get away with that beforehand. Why, I don't exactly know. Maybe because they will have seen that the sergeant's been murdered unconventionally. And then it all ties together because right as he jumps off the back, that's when Digby, now the bugler of this other regiment, comes up over the wall and sees his brother dead on the top of this rooftop. So Digby, it fills in everything we didn't see. It fills in everything we didn't see from the beginning. So Digby sees his brother dead. He sees Markov dead. He grabs his brother after having a moment of shock, picks him up, and then hides in a corner. Well, no, I'm sorry. Scratch that. First thing he does is he hears his CO coming over the wall. And so he immediately pretends to be a corpse in the battlements. He just flops himself over, pretends to be a corpse. So that's why the CO didn't see him initially. Then when the CO goes down into the barracks to look for his bugler and figure out what's going on, Digby picks up his brother, waits in a shadowy corner, waits for that guy to move somewhere else, and then takes him down into the barracks and puts him back in his bed. And that's when he takes the opportunity to give his brother the Viking funeral he always wanted. And I'll just show you that bit, and then Tony and MasterSun and I, we can sort of explain what we're seeing.
Look, what's that?
That's a Viking's funeral.
And for those of you who doubted me that that's Centauri, if you didn't hear his voice in the line, that's a Viking's funeral, then I don't know how to help you, because that's definitely Centauri from The Last Starfighter. Tony, let's bring it all back around, because your favorite moment that made you laugh out loud, you mentioned earlier that you were going to talk about this now. So please have the floor.
Yeah, so that very last sort of clip you see there where they're talking about the Viking funeral, and his brother turns to Digby and he says, "Did you put a dog at his feet?" And he goes, "Yeah, Markov," because he had laid Markov's body there at the end of the bed.
Which explains why the two bodies were missing the moment the CO came back up and was like, "Oh, never mind." Yeah.
So they explain all of that stuff at the fort, and the movie's pretty much over here. There is a little bit more to it, but I just sat there going, okay, I've got two questions. I still don't know who turned the lights off when the sapphire was first stolen. And second, where the hell has he kept that sapphire the entire time? Because I imagine in the French Foreign Legion prison wallet,
yes,
when he gave that to his brother, it probably needed a wash.
Yeah. I was thinking that too. It's like, how many times has he swallowed that thing and let it go through his system again, or whatever, because they didn't have. I'm not even going to go there. We'll get demonetized if I say it. But Jason Anderson says that's not a Viking funeral. That's insurance fraud. Well, yeah, that too. The weird part about this for me was that aside from the lack of explanation at this point about why Beau stole the sapphire, I felt like we were seeing the end of the movie. And then all of a sudden there's this extra bit. And I know that I didn't play a lot of clips in the middle of a lot of the battle scenes, but there were a lot of really nice cinematography in this movie.
Yeah.
That takes place at night during the battle. And I highly recommend, if any of you are interested in this film, at least scrubbing to that point and watching the night battle stuff, because it's very well shot. However, what shocked me about the film was I thought we were watching the end of it, and then all of a sudden we weren't. The two brothers hook back up they get reconnected with two of the men from the garrison that had been sent off to like get reinforcements or something, and they were coming back around the same time. And so the four of them end up in a very quick time lapse, going from being on camelback to suddenly all being ragged and dying of thirst, coming over a dune. And they see an oasis, but that oasis is filled with Bedouin soldiers. And so they decide what they're going to do is three of them are going to stick where they are and start shooting rifles as soon as Digby starts playing his bugle on a dune over to the side, to make the Bedouin think that there's a full garrison or full regiment coming over the hill. And in that process, because they want to clear out the Bedouin so they can get access to the water, in that process, Digby gets fatally shot and killed. One, I was shocked because I was like, oh, there's still more major plot point to go. And I was also shocked that some of the best cinematography in the movie was saved for Digby's death rather than for Beau's death, which was really, I was like, what? So here is the bit where Digby is killed. It's really, really well shot, and yet it's Digby isn't even in the movie until he's in the movie. Yes, he's in the movie, but the whole situation with Markov and the fort and everything like that, Digby's not there. So for him to get killed, I thought to myself, is this a Hollywood thing? And then I ran off and read the synopsis of the book, and no, this is exactly how it plays out in the book.
So I need to also note that when the two people they hooked up with were the Americans who came and saved those two British dudes. And I just thought that we should make sure that we let everybody know that the Americans saved the British guy. And then the British guy got killed because he thinks that in order for a bugle to be heard, you have to stand up and blow said bugle and be a target for this dude on horseback who can turn to the side while galloping at full speed on a horse and hip shot his rifle perfectly and hit that guy. That's all I would say.
Let's just deal with this hostility now.
MasterSun, I hate you the way Anakin Skywalker hates sand. You're rough, you're coarse, you get into everything.
Oh.
I can't deny the cutting and brutal logic of the bugle orientation. I'll let you and Tony fight out the nationality thing, but yes, I agree with you about the whole why does he have to stand up for the bugle? Yeah. Now we do have a comment here from, let's see, where is it? Is it Jesse? Oh no, Jerry Harris says the book had quite a bit about their escape. So apparently the book explains their escape a little more after they get out of the fort, which that would probably be helpful. Wicked Person says, it's not politically correct to say French people anymore. The preferred term is those afflicted by Frenchness. But he's technically correct. The best kind of correct. Yes. Rough, coarse. That's why we love you, Tony. I did not pull a clip of the end because the end is literally just an explanation that we have to give. John survives. He's the only brother to survive. He successfully returns to England and back to the manor house. He reunites with Isabel, played by Susan Hayward. And then he hears the lady of the house come down, and when she sees him alone, she realizes that the other two brothers are probably dead, and they're not coming back, and she's crestfallen. Oddly enough, the snitch son is no longer in the movie, which I thought was pretty interesting. He's gone. He doesn't make a last appearance that I recall. And then
he was eaten by the mouse.
Yeah. And then
I thought he became Dick Dastardly later. That's what I figured happened to him. Yeah, he's in a wacky race with a dog that laughs funny.
Jerry, we could also visit the movie Legionnaire with Jean-Claude Van Damme if we wanted to.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. I'm just throwing that out there as a veiled War Stories threat.
Keep that attitude up,
Michael.
We'll take care of you.
I survived Flyboys. I don't know if I could do a Van Damme film.
She then reads the letter from Beau that he brought back with the gem, and the letter explains that when Beau was a child and he was hiding in the suit of armor, he overheard her selling the actual jewel, the sapphire, to the Maharaja of somewhere that was his emissary. He was a Maharaja of India, and she sold the sapphire to him so that they could have money to live on because the husband had left them with nothing. And as a courtesy, the Maharaja had provided her with a fake version of the sapphire so that her family wouldn't lose face in light of these hardships. But then when they grew up and the husband sends a cable demanding the sale of the sapphire, Beau, who was the only person who knew the real story, immediately knew that was about to put her in an impossible position. And so he stole the fake sapphire and ran off in order to protect her reputation. Now, when I explained this to Melinda, she went into a justifiable tirade as to why it would be her, the lady of the house's reputation that would be on the line when the husband was a deadbeat ne'er-do-well gambling addict that left them with nothing, and then was trying to sell the last thing out from under them when they had already had to just to stay afloat.
First of all, Melinda, it's the woman's fault, and she should stay her butt in the house and don't worry about what we're doing. I'm sorry, Melinda. I'm just saying that to make a point. Please don't kill me. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to say how right you were. I don't want no smoke. But she is correct.
Son, you were going to get your ass canceled.
She's going to call my wife and be like, do you know what your husband is saying right now? That door is about to fly open, choke me out. I'm just kidding, Melinda.
Melinda.
Just get out the conch like that.
I'm sorry, Melinda. I couldn't make fun of Tony anymore. I already got him like 3 times. It's my limit. But another thing is, Beau was getting ready to die over what he knew was a fake jewel.
Like, why would it gets back to the whole thing? Obviously he has to go erase his identity because he is still running from an investigation into a theft. He knows it's a fake jewel, but he's doing all of this to protect his adopted mother's reputation, and protect the family. I am glad that they explained all of it, and I'm glad that they tied up all the loose ends.
Most of them.
Please don't let Melinda kill me.
Tony? What are some of the other loose ends?
Who turned the lights off?
Oh, right. That's true.
And where did he hide the sapphire? The fakes.
Right.
The only place he can hide it is in his
prison wallet.
Who wants to do that with a fake?
Well,
someone in the chat needs to explain what prison wallet is. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
No.
Don't do that.
So now, with a film like this, especially, comes the part in a War Stories episode where we all have to kind of, I think David Mitchell can best sum up what we have to do now.
What we are doing for this section is entirely futile. We will talk for a bit, then we will guess, then it will be over.
So we all now have to decide how we feel about this film. I personally, at first, when I was watching it, I was like, ooh, they've thrown us into the middle of the action. This is cool. Then the movie took a sharp downturn, like steeper than a flume ride for a little while. I was like, dang. And then the movie with the Markov thing, it started to rebuild back some intrigue and some credibility. And I walked away from it saying, it's not a bad movie for its time, but I don't know if it, I don't want to insult the past and say it was an overrated movie then. But I'm going to say it was an overrated movie then. I just don't know if the movie deserves the entire reputation it's got. I mean, but maybe I'm just being an ass. I don't know.
I would agree with you. I think for me, when I can't remember his name, the guy who created Facebook.
Zuckerberg.
He's in the social network, right?
Yeah.
And he won't put the website live. It's like it's missing something. It's missing something. And then in the social network movie, he gets that brainwave, and it's like, because this is going to be a college thing. It's like relationship status, and you could be single, in a relationship. Well, my relationship with this film is it's complicated. And that's it.
What about you, MasterSun?
By watching this film, I thought about how smart and witty and beautiful Melinda is, and that she would never do harm to any living soul. And then past that, I began like you. When it first started, I thought, okay, we're into some action. And then they put the bodies were all up there, and I thought I thought it was, the bad guys are putting these guys up there as a warning to everybody else. And when it got back to them, the little rascals, I was like, all right, what are we doing here? And then it took so long to build back up. But I guess back in the 1930s, when you don't have TV, you can afford to be in the movie theater for 2 hours, 3 hours, because what are you going to do when you get home? But it took a long time. And then I got frustrated because they're dealing with Markov, who I'm like, dude, you should kill this dude or choke him out, do something, get rid of this dude. He's the problem. This is going to sound bad, but in context, I told my airmen this, because, when they talk about suicides and stuff in the military, and it's a big thing about, you need to, you got a problem, you need to talk to people. And I made a joke, got told, don't make those kind of jokes. But my joke was, don't choose suicide when homicide is still an option. Because chances are the person who's giving you grief is giving somebody else grief, and you're probably doing some other people a favor. I got told, Captain, you shouldn't say that. But okay. But that's my thing, is like, this guy was causing 90%. I know, it's what I say. 90% of the problems. If you would have got rid of him, just about all the problems would have been solved in this whole movie. Like instantly. And yet they drug it on. And I thought he was the best character. He did the best acting. The fact that he was supposed to be someone who, and they talk about him being this crazy Russian dude. I'm like, this dude was scary to me. Had a little scar and everything too. I was like, oh my goodness. he did a really, really good job at that. And that's what I said. This movie just had me like, oh my God. At one point, I was like, all right, let's get the killing on. Obviously, everybody's gonna die. Let's make this happen so we can figure what's going on.
Right.
I got one more question for Michael, and this is something you may know.
Okay.
I've always wondered. When I watch old movies,
Mm-hmm.
and anytime there's credits,
yep,
or here's people in it, it seems like it was on the screen longer than it is now. Is it because people back then could not read as well, and they needed? No, I'm being dead serious. I'm being dead serious. Could they not read? Think about it. The education level of back then, everybody didn't graduate from school.
Sure.
People had like fourth grade educations, and they
I'm telling you now, in Britain, people back then could read a lot better than what they can today.
Right.
Oh. So I was always wondering,
broader vocabulary.
Yeah. Okay.
They could write using cursive.
But we're talking about America.
My son messages me now just with like acronym. I don't even know. I have to Google these acronyms half the time. Yeah.
The credits stay on screen longer. One, because they were at the time they didn't have to show as many. They could, in other words, they only had to show like a plate or two of credits because there weren't those legal mandates then from all the different guilds that there are now to show every single person who worked on the film. It was like, if you were a journeyman camera operator for Warner Brothers or Paramount back then, you didn't get in the credits at the end, but you were just working every day of your life on all these different studio movies all the time. So you didn't really worry about it too much because you were getting paid and you were going to earn a retirement and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there were fewer credits. And, back then it was like, these are the stars of the film, and the people that matter in the film is anybody who had like a speaking role beyond 2 sentences, and they're going to be, credited, and then the director and the writer and the producer. And that's really about it. So maybe they stayed on screen longer because one, there was a I think it wasn't Screen Actors Guild. I think it was Directors Guild of America or something. There was a mandate for a long time that said you have to have credits at the beginning, which is what George Lucas got in trouble for on Empire Strikes Back. They let it pass on Star Wars because they thought the movie wasn't going to be anything, so they didn't care. But then on Empire, they were like, hey! And he was like, no. So he fought that. So you had your credit plates at the beginning, which always end with the little Western Electric thing at the beginning. There's always that little Western Electric symbol at the bottom for the end of the beginning credits. And then at the end, you have like your the end with your cast plate. And that's about it. So, yeah.
Told you even know.
I know the nuts and bolts. I don't know necessarily the why. I'm conjecturing about the why. Yeah. Some people in the chat were like thinking that I hate the movie. I don't hate the movie at all. You guys have seen enough RetroBlasting videos. When I hate something. Like, this is not me hating a movie. This is me going, yeah, competent film, had some good plot devices woven into it, little slow and weird in places, little padded out in places.
Cinematography was great. Production design was great.
Yeah.
Costumes were great.
Costumes were really good. I really like that.
Yeah. It's just...
What I'll say is I would rather rewatch this than sit through Avatar 2 again.
Or Flyboys.
I would watch Flyboys before I sat through Avatar 2 again.
Me too. But I'm saying if we're doing the pecking order of what we could sit through again.
And I liked Avatar 1.
Oh, see, I
think that's one of the...
It's
one of the few films I think we disagree on, Michael. I liked Avatar 1. Mm-hmm. I hated Avatar 2. But anyway, that's not a war story.
No. It's a war between
us. When Melinda keeps watching this again.
Clemens, does your wife watch this? Because you might be sleeping on the couch tonight.
She hasn't, to my knowledge. When I get reported on, she may on this one, just to decide what level of trouble I am in. Melinda, how'd you like your Christmas gift? I'm the same guy who did that. Hey.
Jason Anderson, he says next time on War Stories, Avatarded or Tony hates blue cat people. And for the record, as someone who enjoyed Avatar 1, I came out of Avatar 2 and I renamed it Avabor, the Way of Torture. So
Evander suggests Who Dares wins.
I've
heard of that.
I don't think we can do Who Dares wins because that is a fictional version of the Iranian. Like, people were kind of 50-50 about the Iranian embassy siege. This is not the Iranian embassy. It's fictional. It's not based in a real setting. Have either of you two seen the 2017 film 6 Days starring Jamie Bell?
No.
So I have not, because from what I heard, it was a lot of politics dictated how that story went. I heard there was some key information that wasn't put in. I just never saw it. And that was the reason why I heard a lot of people say it was very good, but but no, I haven't seen it. Oh God. And I do this all the time. It's my own fault. This right here, this thing, I can't keep in the brain, in the mouth. But it was funny, and I'm like, I think it was worth it. And then later,
it's not easy to stand up there saying some of those jokes. You know they're not going to get a laugh, and
they got to laugh. Oh, they got to laugh. The cost. What did Thanos say? What did it cost you?
Oh yeah, true. Everything. Well, what are we? I mean, I guess we never do. We? I can't remember from one episode to the next if we decide what we're doing at the end of this episode, or we wait and we talk about it in the background. Or
I think the only one you ever did was Back 21, where you said that's what we're going to do. We talk about it, and everybody puts in their ideas.
Okay.
And then later we kind of go, yeah, that was a good idea. Let's do that one.
All right. Well, then we will end this by telling everybody that, yes, we will powwow in the background and come up with the next War Stories movie, and then we'll announce it as usual. And hopefully it will be one that I don't have to hand colorize the thumbnail for like I did this one. So, yeah. I am proud of that thumbnail, though. I think it really popped.
Very good. It was very good talent.
Thank you. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching this episode of War Stories. We hope you had fun. And we will see you on the next War Stories in, 2 weeks?
Maybe. Let's talk after, but maybe 1 week if you're interested.
Oh, I love the cameo at the very end. You got live stream bombed right there. Just boom. I love it. And with that, everybody, good night.
Good night.